Welcome to Jack's Corner, where conservative values meet national headlines, and truth and reality have a seat at the table. From Louisville, Kentucky, here's your host, Jack Richardson.
Well, welcome back to Jack's Corner, where truth and reality have a seat at the table. And as usual, the lie is trying to cover up the truth. So I'd like to talk to you about some of the recent hot topics and events of the day, and we will start with the tragic flight of American Airlines into Reagan International. I've flown into Reagan International about half a dozen times in the last 6 months, and on approach to Reagan, I can't ever recall a time where it was a smooth landing. Whether a clear day or overcast, lining up for your final approach is a roller coaster. All too often, the traffic is so congested that we have to circle the airport, and we always land coming in over the Potomac. It is clear to me that the disastrous crash that occurred just a few days ago was totally avoidable and full of human error. The first question that came to my mind was, why in the hell were we having training flights by the military over one of the most congested commercial areas in the country? It's amazing how many of those flights are carrying members of Congress and of the administration. The loss of those who were on board the American Airlines flight is heartbreaking and gives all of us who fly a lot of anxiety. But to do military training in this area in the flight path of commercial aviation is absurd. Trump had an immediate press conference on the tragedy and, as usual, came in for some criticism about trying to politicize this tragedy by bringing up DEI. Once again, when you start digging into the details, Trump is always right. He doesn't come up with these things out of thin air. We'd better start listening and digging into the facts. When you start looking at the statistics and data, they almost always seem to be a quota of people with disabilities, mental problems, the vision and hearing impaired, etc., etc. I don't know about you, but when I'm on that plane, I want the brightest and most brilliant people in air traffic control, as well as the cockpit of the plane that I'm on, and I don't care about other people's DEI sensitivities. There are certain areas of life where you need the best and the brightest and the most capable for that job. And the reason why is because other lives depend upon it. Those who insist upon silly, psychotic things like a diversity, equity, and inclusion in critical areas of our society are truly the ones who are a threat and danger to humanity. They need to be removed from the stage. I've represented many pilots and even air traffic controllers as an attorney, and I can tell you with what I know and with what I do know, I pray on every takeoff and give praise with every landing. Yes, there are many great professionals in those positions, but it has been infected with DEI thanks to Biden, and we have to cleanse the liberal rot if we want to be safe. Here's the best example of all in regards to DEI. Former Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, appointed by President Biden, was a small-town mayor in Indiana and got the job because he was gay and married to another man. He had no experience or expertise in transportation, and under his leadership, there were so many major crises during his term, there were many calls for his resignation. The next area I want to talk about is the confirmation hearings that have been going on in Washington, D.C. with regard to President Trump's nominee picks for various key positions in our government. Kash Patel for the FBI, Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence, and Robert F. Kennedy for Health and Human Services. They were on the block being interrogated by many people who only by hook and crook and sheer luck gained their positions in the Senate. These leadership frauds and imposters, that is, Democrat senators and 2 or 3 Republicans who pretend to know something, started firing questions at these nominees. The questions didn't come from the senators because they're not smart enough to figure them out themselves, but by the staff of people in their offices. I know. I've been there. The most annoying senator of all was Michael Bennet from Colorado. That center of the country, middle of nowhere, enclave of psychotic leftists. Personally, I can't think of a more boring place to be, quite honestly, because you have to drive 1,000 miles to get anywhere else of interest. But all that aside, Bennett, whose credentials in his past life are less than sterling, he is nothing more than a crass politician trying to cover up his own ineptness and ignorance by asking questions that he would never allow the nominees to answer. Just watch him. He was shrill and an emotional simp of a man who was emotionally out of control, yelling, overbearing, and avoiding answers from the nominees that would have caused Bennett embarrassment if he had allowed them to answer. That's a leftist Democrat for you. I can assure my listeners of this, and that is the best comedy show in Russia and China is listening to and watching the Democrats. They're the best opposition. They're the best enemy that the Russians and Chinese could have. The Democrats are truly the product of the Soviet-style education system, all designed to dumb down a country. I have nothing but contempt for these people, and particularly Senator Bennett. I urge you to watch his performance as he questioned Trump's nominees. He would not allow them to answer his question because he knew what the truth was and he couldn't handle it. Next is the Samoan Senator Hironi from Hawaii. Boy, does she give me heartburn, and you won't be able to stand her if you watch her. Between she and Bennett, the two of them just might barely pass a high school math exam. They all are emotional and speak with outrage to cover up their own stupidity. Hironi even embarrassed me as I watched her. She could have stripped naked and it wouldn't have been any more embarrassing. It is exasperating, the tolerance and the moral equivalency that too many on the right, that is Republicans, allow them. I guarantee you that if I were within the committee, they would need some psychiatric treatment because I would not toxically tolerate the left parading around as intellectuals when they are clearly mentally handicapped. They grilled Robert Kennedy, one of their own, and being the fools that they are, may very well die of one of the diseases that he's trying to prevent. Quite frankly, that would be a just dessert for them. These Democrats are nothing but the whores of Big Pharma, the military-industrial complex, and Big Ag, who depended upon them to turn a blind eye to the poisons, basically the poisons that they pump into our homes and into our foods every day, all in return for campaign cash that keeps these misfits in office. Then we have the grilling of Kash Patel, who is the nominee for the FBI. And why did he get grilled so terribly? It's because if not for him, the corruption of the Democrats and the fake Russian collusion hoax that they accused Trump of was exposed, along with all of their crimes. If justice were blind, half of the Democrat Party would be in jail, just like the former Democrat Senator Menendez of Maryland is heading for an 11-year prison sentence for his corruption. We have the likes of Bernie Sanders and Pocahontas, better known as the Senator Warren from Massachusetts, the Commonwealth of Psychotics, who almost needed to be led from the hearings in straitjackets because they were so emotionally out of control in their questioning of the nominees. Again, they would ask questions they would not allow the nominees to answer because it would only expose them for the frauds that they are. If ever there was a national emergency, it would be to pull these people out into the public square and expose them for who they are. Truly, the background of these people are so astounding that if only the rude truth be known about these people, it would be difficult to keep them safe, even in a padded cell, as the public would be so outraged. Yes, they oppose Patel because he knows of the crimes many of his inquisitors have committed. As I watched the interrogations of Patel, Robert F. Kennedy, and Tulsi Gabbard, I drooled at the opportunity to have been in their position to answer the inquiries because I would have humiliated my inquisitors with the embarrassing facts of their personal lives and the decisions and crimes they have made. If you want to humble these people, you have to remind them of their past. Now that brings me to the most important point of this podcast, and that is the irritating, subdued nature of some Republicans. As I was taught by Mitch McConnell of the past, not the one we know today, his motto was shoot the wounded and take no prisoners, and that's how he rose to the position he had for so long. When you're in a battle between sensible and psychotic people, You yourselves are irrational and psychotic if you attempt to argue with a fool, and that's exactly what too many of the Republicans that we're dealing with today were doing in these hearings. As Victor David Hanson just noted, the Republicans do have a problem, and that is the same cohesiveness that the Democrats have. Since these hearings are public, the public needs to know who these Democrat ideologues are and the dirt in their background, yet the Republicans were too polite, which was not reciprocated by the Democrats. I would have used some of my time as an inquisitor to humiliate and delegitimize my opponents on the left for the frauds that they are, thus nullifying the false claims they were lodging against the nominees. The Democrats were not interested in the truth. They never have been. When will Republicans wake up? You can't win the war unless you realize that you are in one and fight it like it was a war. Believe me, we are in a war with the most evil and wicked people that you can imagine, but they all do it with a smile on their face, and they will always tell you that they pray, but they can't tell you what God they're praying to. Let's talk about next the unhinged left since Trump's inauguration. They are like rabid dogs. There is no cure, and we all know what you have to do with a rabid animal. But here's a couple of examples. As you have seen on the leftist news outlets, they are now blaming Trump 5 days into his term for not bringing down the price of eggs. Now that's absurd. That's another example of how dishonest and desperate the left and the Democrats are, particularly in light of the fact that in 2024, under Biden, the price of eggs had increased 64%. Here's another good one for you. CNN commentator Bakari Sellers posted that Trump was responsible for the plane crash over the Potomac. After facing unrelenting criticism about that, Sellers withdrew his post, apologized, and said that he effed up. Well, I can assure you of one thing. He's not only effed up, he is effed up, as everyone else at CNN. These people are truly incapable of seeing their own evil and the errors of their ways, yet too many Republicans passively treat them as moral equals. There is no moral equivalency between the left and the right. I give you these examples to impress upon you that you are a fool to believe anything a Democrat or the legacy media tells you today, and you have to take responsibility for educating yourselves. In a recent article that I wrote and published in the bluegrasschronicles.com entitled, "What is a Democrat?" I lay out in detailed fashion just exactly what a Democrat is, what they believe, and back it up with facts. There is no arguing with those facts. I encourage you to check it out. So in conclusion, I encourage you to watch some of the hearings of RFK, Kash Patel, and Tulsi Gabbard to see for yourselves just how unhinged and disinterested the Democrats are in the truth. We desperately need Donald Trump's picks confirmed so as to cleanse our bureaucracy of all these psychotics and criminals. They have made our lives miserable. And yes, the Democrats are the main culprits to our problems today in this country. But you also have to go after the few Republicans who are squeamish, cowardly, spineless, and too much a part of the establishment and all too willing to compromise with that which should never be compromised. All right, folks. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for joining me on Jack's Corner. I'm Jack Richardson.